we would be starting our next panel discussion, which is on completing tax reforms. And this particular session would be moderated by Mr. Samir Kochar. I would like to request Dr. M. Govinda Rao to please come forward and give his Jai Hind keynote.
Good morning, friends. Mr. Samir Kochar, dignitaries on the dais, my good friends, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. In the next 14 and a half minutes, let me try to point out some of the most important problems that is faced in the Indian fisc. India's tax GDP ratio has been hovering, aggregate tax GDP ratio, has been hovering around 16 to 16.5% in the last 10 years. The highest tax GDP ratio was 17.4% reached in 2007-8, and subsequently this has declined. This is much lower than the ratios that you see in the countries with the comparable levels of development. And my own analysis of 98 countries, comparative analysis, shows that the tax ratio for this level of development in India should be somewhere about 19 to 20%. There are a number of factors responsible for this particular low tax GDP ratio. Pursuit of large number of objectives through tax policy is, giving way to all sorts of tax concessions is one of the major factors. But here we are going to talk about one other important factor, namely the tax abuse by multinational companies. There is a huge number of, the difficulty in taxing the digital multinationals is a special case of tax abuse by multinationals. Now, tax abuse by them is more worrisome due to lack of transparency in their transactions and their access to data. It has transformed the conventional methods of transaction to do businesses through web, and they do business through web-based platforms. It is difficult to fix the usual transfer pricing rules, where you use the arm's length pricing rules. It's impossible to, deal with them, as they derive profits from not only conventional intangibles like names, goodwill, brand recognition and intellectual property rights, but also by using and selling data. Most have their head offices in developed countries, and that makes taxing them a challenge in developing countries because they don't have a presence here, a physical presence here. India has almost 10% of users but earns less than 1% of revenue from them. And whereas US, for example, has less than 1/10 of the users, but earns more than 1/3 of the global average. Now, this is in some ways different from the tax abuse of multinationals, because multinationals, actually base their listings in tax havens or low tax jurisdictions, and not necessarily on high developed countries, and operate from there. Whereas digital multinationals, now even the G20 assignment to the OECD to do what is called the base erosion and profit shifting, this thing has a huge problem here, because the interests of the developed and developing countries do not coincide, and OECD basically represent the developed countries. So when you have this sort of a thing, the agreement between the different countries becomes very difficult, and in the absence of an agreement, multinationals continue to evade taxes. India has tried to exact some taxes from them through what is called the equalization levy in 2016, which is a tax required to be deducted by the businesses seeking services from these entities at something like 56% of the value of the payment made by the domestic companies to these digital companies. Following India, others also have followed the practice, and the European Commission actually started levying a similar tax. Now, this has resulted in an uncoordinated levy, And finally, the matter has been referred to the OECD BEPS team, as I mentioned, and agreement on how to apportion the profits, however, has eluded, because there is, I mean, the interests of the developed and developing countries, as I mentioned, do not necessarily coincide. The 21-page discussion paper was put out on October 9th, 2019 for discussion, and it does not go much farther in terms of clearing to satisfying the developing countries. And India has indeed raised a number of issues with the draft, and these include scope of business based on which the tax would be levied. Developed nations want that the developing countries to tax only the consumer-facing businesses, which provide, that means business to consumers, type of this thing. But the business to business, they do not want the developing countries to levy the tax. But much of the actually activity happens from business to businesses. So this means to keep out those all sales from business to businesses, such as industrial goods and professional service companies. They also include threshold for revenue generated globally, as well as their jurisdiction, and how to create a nexus between creating a concept of virtual company in the case of permanent establishment, because I mean these virtual companies, sort of the definition has come in for a lot of discussion. So there is agreement has this thing. So one solution that has been suggested, there is an organization called ICRIT, Independent Commission for the Reform of International Corporate Taxation. Now this is sort of a commission which is set up by various non-profit groups. Now this is consisting of a group of leaders from the government, academia and civil society, created reforms in this particular area. And they say that they actually talk about the unitary taxation. That means for all these companies, get the total profits. Obviously they will, the worldwide profit, because they are not going to show low worldwide profit, because they have to be responsible for their shareholders. And then divide this among the countries according to some formula. But then again, there is this question of finding a right formula, and obviously developing and developing countries do not agree to that sort of a formula. And possibly we need to move towards, like in the case of WTO or the World Trade Organization, we need to move towards an institutional mechanism to deal with this. Possibly we need what is called the World Tax Organization. Unless and until there is a forum where you can come to a discussion and agreement among all the parties, this digital companies will continue to evade the tax. The second issue that has been flagged is, I want to talk about, is one of those tax reforms that is continuing to evolve in Indian context, and that is the goods and services tax. The tax was unveiled with much fanfare and euphoria, and businesses welcomed it as a game changer and reform of the century. The implementation involves the center and 31 states and union territories with different parties in power. So indeed, to get an agreement and then levy implement the reform has been an important achievement. But it has been evolving in the last 28 months, and it has a long way before it is accomplished. In fact, in every country which levied the tax like a GST, there has been a period when the things have been evolving before it settled down. But in Indian context, there are many more major issues. In fact, as of 2018, 166 countries among the 193 UN members have adopted one form of GST or another. And there is no one-size-fits-all type of GST. It's neither a gorilla nor a chimpanzee. It's a genus-like primate, as my good friend Richard Bird says. Sometimes GST, but then it's also very important. Often when we implement the GST with some bad features, just to get it implemented, just to get agreement by all the parties, and then later it becomes extremely difficult to get rid of those bad get rid of those bad elements in the system. The important lessons from the international experiences are, one, you have to have a broad, comprehensive base with minimum exemptions, credits, and deductions. Do not use the tax system to achieve multiple objectives. Keep the threshold high, because that will achieve your equity objective. Keep that, and then obviously becomes tractable, administrable. Keep the threshold high to focus on whales rather than minnows. Simple tax with the minimum rate differences. Continuous monitoring. Collection of the tax at source, and have a unique ID system. Do not collect more information than what is required and what you can process. Encourage good record keeping and facilitate self-assessment. These are some of the major, good features of a good GST system. There have been a number of gains from the implementation of GST. We should acknowledge them. One is the checkposts have been removed, and this has facilitated the faster movement of goods. Uniformity in the rates of tax and administration across the country. You don't have different rates in different states, unlike in the past when you had. Now, more comprehensive input tax credit mechanism that existed earlier. And GST Council is a unique institution in that sense in terms of developing a cooperative federalism. However, the GST performance can be viewed from the, in most countries, GST has been a money machine. That has not turned out to be the case. There is much more cascading that takes place in the Indian tax system. The exclusion of petroleum products and electricity both, results in, almost 43% of the central tax, internal indirect taxes, and 40% of the state indirect taxes out of the, the GST network, which means that cascading from that continues, and that has also resulted in exempting the entire transportation sector from the GST, excluding airfare and sort of first class and ACR train fare. The entire transportation sector is out, which has actually narrowed down. GST performance. So, from the viewpoint of the government, unlike most countries, GST has ceased to be a money machine, as I mentioned. I will not go into the numbers, but then, in fact, GST growth has been a major issue of concern. As far as businesses are concerned, the major problem is on account of complicated structure, difficulties in getting refunds on time. The four main rates and cesses add up to a complicated system. The tax rates are in fact, in the earlier session, they talked about Sloan in two major sectors, construction and automobiles. Now, in automobiles, particularly some cars, the tax rate works out to be 50%, 28 plus 22% cess. And in the case of entire construction material, tax rate is 28%. Obviously, that has its bad effects. And then no country in the world, and then your threshold is low. As I mentioned, up to 50 lakhs, so the number of taxpayers, the proportion of taxpayers, if you really see in our country, is 92%. They have 6.5% turnover. Their tax paid is just about 11%. Now, do we really bother about the whale, minnows, rather than looking at the whales? That's the question. And ultimately, unless and until your technology platform stabilizes, the tax compliance will not increase, and in order to get the technology platform, get rid of the number of too many taxpayers, you can always go back to them, through the big data analysis. So I think keeping the threshold for both goods and services at 50 lakhs is going to do a lot of help, in terms of stabilizing the technology. The other thing that we do is we want to match every invoice. In fact, Korea is one country which tried to do that and failed. And in fact, the practice is to keep a threshold for matching this thing. Maybe you can keep all invoices above 10,000 rupees will be matched. You can always go back and then through the big data analysis, and that would at least stabilize the technology, and that's the most important thing to do. And in the next stage, Once you stabilize the technology, get the revenues right, you can go and then get rid of this item called 28%. They constitute 20% of the tax revenue as of now. Now, if you get rid of that, they might come, you might lose some 10% of revenue, but that you cannot do it now. Once you stabilize the technology, you can do it. And in the third stage, you can. So on the issue of, on the issue of this discounting, which he said, unless and until you stabilize the technology, unless and until you make the compliances work, the risks involved in discounting is enormous, and therefore discounting will not work until you stabilize the technology. Thank you.
You know, my only qualification for moderating this panel is that in my own eyes I pay a lot of taxes. And therefore, I would like to see the completion of tax reforms. The way I would go about moderating this panel is, in my own way, in the sense that I am not following any sequence, but I will pick up an issue and we will exhaust the issue and then we'll move on to the next issue. And we've just started with Dr. Govinda Rao, who very lucidly put together his thoughts on GST. I happened to read his exhaustive article that appeared in Mint as well. Can you hear me now? Is that better? I'm audible, right? There's some echo, so if you could just take care of the echo. Okay, so I'll start with Mr. Ved Kumar Jain. We were having this conversation on the phone, discussing the panel, and your thought was that the GST system is entirely broken. Lot of distortions have come into GST. Could you explain why do you feel that the GST system is broken, if at all it is broken?
One of the very idealistic system of indirect taxation. And and the expectation was that it will be a transparent, efficient, and will help in avoiding taxes. People which could avoid taxes, it will take care of that. But what happened is, when it was introduced, two, I think, important things happened. One, it was too idealistic. Implementation was expected to be too idealistic, and I can give you two examples, two areas which was a challenge. One, 100% matching. That was a major challenge, which in a country like of 130 crore people, matching would be impossible, because I have an experience of income tax department. They started computerization way back, I believe, in 2003 or 4, and TDS reconciliation today also is almost 90% after 15 years, not 100%. And the transaction in GST was supposed to be at least 100 times of the transaction in TDS. Expecting a reconciliation complete in the day one was very important. Second was, when it was being introduced, the concept was that nobody will break the chain. But sometime after introductions, political compulsion takes over the economic need and the need of the system. And in that process, I believe the government somewhere took certain steps where they relaxed those areas where the chain stand broken now at a number of places. One, when we increase the threshold limit time and again from 10 or 20 lakh to 50 lakh over and 75 lakh, we have taken out so many people out of the chain, which I believe was not, because even otherwise, before GST, when VAT was on, all these people were registered and filing the tax VAT returns. And second was, the presumptive model of 1% takes away so many people and is absolutely contrary to the GST whole concept that nobody should be out of the chain. And with we begin 1%. And the third was the tax rate structure. One thing which I was expecting as an accountant, I believe, is the government should have done a little bit more homework, knowing that how much taxes are being collected from VAT and excise duty and other taxes, which are supposed to be subsumed in the GST, and how those new rates are going to ensure that the collection will be of the same level. Instead of going at a macro level, the micro management of the tax rate could have been there, which would have helped the government now. Now, in case I'm supposed to give what need to be done today is on the GST ways, I am of the view that the government need not get panicky on the GST. It has stabilized. and should not allow people to go out of the chain. As regard tax evasion, I am reasonably sure as the time passes on, as the computerization and the digitization, the way it has happened in India, will be no scope for any person to avoid GST. It is a transitional phase where these teething problems are likely to happen, and I am still of the view when we should go back on the drawing board and reduce this threshold limit, withdraw this presumptive model of taxation, make compliance easier. Please to make sure. That's a challenge. That's why the political compulsion came. We expected even a small dealer to file complete invoice or network. That's not required. Just simple form monthly that what is the total sales or turnover I have made, on which how much taxes are supposed to be paid and how much is the input tax credit. We will believe you, and over a period of digitization will take care. That's the idea which I believe.
Thank you, Vedji. That brings me to Mr. Arun Goyal. Arun, you were responsible for introducing GST, and you were at the helm of affairs then. So, in hindsight, what is it that you would have done differently, or do you think it's working perfect?
Thank you, Samir. It's always a pleasure to be in the events organized by you. Now we are, if you look at, we are nearly 2.5 years into GST, and so there are two main issues if we look at broadly. One is the tax-related issue or the slab-related issue, whether how the goods can be put into different slabs or there is a skill scope for further reduction. And the other is that how do we really enhance our revenues. So if we look into the first issue, I think over a period of time, GST Council has taken a number of decisions whereby I think tax rates have rationalized quite a bit. One has to look into perspective that once we started, there were many goods which were in the range of around 30 to 31%, and they were put into 28%. But just I want to mention that if we say when we started, so there were 228 items which were in the 28% bracket. And now that number is nearly only 29. I think maybe it's little less than 29 also. So this is a major shift that has taken place, and most of these items have either gone to 18% or even some of them to the 12%. And the revenue loss because of this was in the range of more than 1 lakh crore. So the government has taken a very conscious decision to bring down the rates, and one needs to appreciate that once we started, India was a high tax country, and we had, excise duty as well as sale tax and VAT. So both combined, the incidence was very high. So once we merged two, so obviously government could not immediately say that we're going to have very, very low rates and then the revenue would have taken hit. But having said that, so what we see is that still, and one more statistics I would like to mention, that RBI has recently come up with a report. When the GST was being planned, at that stage, our chief economic advisor had come up with a revenue neutral rate, and it was supposed to be between 15 to 15.5%. But RBI has recently pointed out that this thing has actually come down drastically. And in fact, in the 2017, when we started, it was around 14.4%, and now it is only 11.6%. So which is a huge drop if we look at the effective rate of taxation that is happening in the GST. So personally, I feel that, of course, there is a scope for rationalizations, but not much scope. Now, the two big ticket items that people keep talking about is that we could take petroleum goods into the GST, and second is whether alcohol can be brought into GST. Now, again, the revenue implication of these two items is approximately 25 to 35%. That is, the states, these two items contribute approximately 30% of the state revenue. So we would still like that these items are brought into GST gradually. And as you all know, that as regards items pertaining to petroleum, so only a decision with the GST Council is required. Once we get a consensus, so these can be brought into the GST network. But my personal feeling is that we really need to stabilize the revenues, and the tax, if they find that there is a tax buoyancy, these items could be brought in. Now the issue comes is that once almost the tax rates have been rationalized, and if we look at international experience also, in many European countries, the GST rates are in the range of 10 to 20%. So what has happened over a period of time is that we've been able to get a lot of people into the GST. And in fact, almost up to 1.2 crore taxpayers who are registered in the GST, more than half of them are the new taxpayers. But again, very interesting thing is that the 78% of the revenue that we are getting only from the 0.6% of the taxpayers. Further, like 99% of the revenues are coming from only 22% of the taxpayers. So we really have to expand the tax base. We have been able to get more and more people into the GST. They have registered, but still more than 25% people are only filing the return, but they are not paying any taxes. So for this, the very important thing is that our return has to be simplified. So a lot of discussion has taken place in the council in this regard. The formats have been finalized, and GST has been working on that. Of course, the timeline is getting shifted from, one date to another. Now the latest timeline is that the GST return would be filed, it will be finalized by January
Thank you very much.
2019.
I'd like to bring in Shri Anil Sharma ji. I have very specific questions. So, we heard Ved Jain ji. He said practically nothing is working and, a lot of changes are required. Arun's opinion is things are fine, little bit of tinkering is required. But the fact is that the government, central government as well as state government finances are in a mess because there is hardly any revenue or very huge shortfall in GST. So what's your take? What do you think should do and what's the truth?
You see, I think in my views, there are three reasons for that. The very first reason is the sluggishness in the market itself. So that's general point. Second issue is about the tax system efficiency. What he has said is, I will totally agree with Vedji. You see, when this system was introduced, it was like a ERP. So when a system is introduced and you start implementing it into parts, it will always going to give you bad results. We have seen in various other areas also. Same thing happened with the GST system. A ERP was initially planned, but they started implementing in phases, so that they could not succeed in that. That's the one issue. Rather, I would say the second. Third one is the compliances by taxpayer. You see, what has happened when taxpayer found, some of them found that system is not efficiently working, so they started looking at areas where they can manipulate. And the very first area I would say is the classification itself. There are a lot of issues which are coming out of classification. A particular item, whether it will fall into 5% or 15%, so many tricks are being played there, and which is actually resulting into a lot of evasion of GST. So on these three things, I would say, so system has to be in such a way, implemented in such a way that it has to work like an ERP in a real sense.
Okay, so with that, we have a lot of informed people in the audience. I can see my own CA, Mr. Arun Ahuja, right in the front. You always are facing so much problem with GST. What's wrong? You can't even file returns. You ask us to wait for 4 days, 5 days. System is down. We can't upload. We miss deadline. And anybody else who wants to can raise your hand or any comment on GST.
Sameer ji, lot of problems recently when government knows that there is mess in compliance issue. Recently in October, they bring out changes in Rule 36 regarding input credit of 20%. How can be I penalized for any default of other person? This is the basic question. All GST, because there is no in Bear Act, no provision of 3B return. You have to wait. I am totally agree with Ved Jain ji. This is totally compliance issue mess. bogus billing mess because of the system is not working. Initially, when the system is not working in initial stages, then the general perception is that system failure. The fundamental of GST already lost in the initial stages itself. When the portal, when you are going to Facebook, etc., everything is fine. Why in India, when you are going for such a big reform and your system is not working? That is the biggest hurdle.
Thank you. There's gentleman in the front.
Yes, fine. Thank you. My name is Ghansham Das. My question regarding GST is twofold. One is, when it was introduced, as commoners, I'm not talking to you as economists, I'm talking to you as a common man who expects as to what should be delivered. One, I think we should have very prudently divided the entire structure of tax imposition, like GST imposition, into two parts. Essentials, non-essentials, means luxuries. You know, maybe most of us who are in the top 1% of the bracket or 2% of the bracket in this country have no issue, no concern. They will pay whatever is required to be paid. But people down the line who are living in, say, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 cities and the villages, 650,000 villages, they expect the least of impositional impact on them. One. Number two, in terms of enforceability. I'm living in a city like Bangalore. Over the last 4 months, whatever I purchased, I collected all the invoices with GST paid. And I sent to the concerned commissionerate. I said, verify if these taxes have been deposited. You'll be surprised, I know the boy, more than 60% were not deposited. How do we enforce it? Then I found discreetly, on my own as a nationalist, as an Indian national, that the guy is maintaining two systems. One where he's generating invoice, which he's filing actually to the government. One system where he's simply generating invoices, not filing with the government, not paying any taxes. How do we remove this anomaly? This is something which is critical. To my mind, the way we did it for pharmaceuticals, inclusive tax rate, which is paid by the consumer, whatever is there. I think instead of managing 1.2 billion people in the country, and when we know that more than 70% of the trade is in the unorganized sector, it's very difficult to enforce. We should have this inputted or enforced through the organized sector, which manufactures and distributes it and sells it through this unorganized network. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at the end of round one, I think we are coming. So there's one more comment. Kunal, gentleman in the third row in the center.
If we compare pre-GST regime and current regime, definitely there is a good tax reform which has happened in this country. Earlier there used to be a lot of physical, visit to the departments on many issues, which has been reduced, quite a lot. Even with for small registration or amendment, the officer, we have to go to the department and get a registration certificate amended, and all those things have been eased out. What I see is that even filing of return is also not an issue. The major issue is only on the ITC mismatches which is there. Because of no fault of SSC, if somebody, the other supplier has not uploaded the return properly or not paid the taxes, the recipient should not be penalized on that account. I think that is something, the basic concern of the corporate or any taxpayer is why he should be penalized if a supplier has not paid the tax or not filed the return properly. On the, if we talk about the pre-GST regime, there were a lot of entry forms, a lot of check post issues which was there, which in the present GST form, those hassles are not there. Way bill is there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We got your point. So just to conclude the first round.
Can I just?
I'll just come. Okay. So now we have to give conclusions to the first question, and we have got 2 more to go. So the first question was, what do we need to do about GST just now, immediately? What needs to be fixed? I think the first conclusion is the technology needs to be fixed. right? The technology platform does not seem to be very stable, and we need to fix that. Any disagreement with that? No one? Everyone is in agreement. Okay. The second point is that this onus of tax collection being passed on the taxpayer, this mindset must go. The job of collecting taxes is that of the government. You cannot pass that job on to the taxpayer. If government is not able to collect taxes, then it's government's problem. It's not my problem that my neighbor or my supplier is not paying taxes. Is there an agreement on that?
Yeah, I think that's.
So there's absolute agreement on that, that a taxpayer, GST payer cannot be penalized for his customer not paying taxes.
It has to, with one rider, if he has collected the funds on behalf of the government, it has to be immediately transferred to the government. I mean, he should not be utilizing government funds for his business.
No, that I agree. So the third point is that we need lesser rates. And the consensus seems to be 3 rates with one of them being 0. So you have to have a 0 rate, then you can have a 12 rate, and you can have 15 rate. Is that right, or 18? Yeah, that's okay. So he's saying 0, 12, 18. What would you say?
I would say 0, 6, and 15.
That's the right.
0, 6, 15?
I agree with you.
What I would suggest is that one could think about 12 and 18 getting merged into one. So that is the general thinking. Yeah.
Okay. So the sense is that there should be 3 rates, 0, 6, and 18. 15. 0, 6, and 15. So that's a consensus. Is there anything I had left out on GST? One, of course, which I mentioned, is the GST refund wallet. You know, if government owes me GST refund, they should not be asking me to deposit more GST. They should utilize the credit that is due to me to offset that. So there has to be a GST refund wallet. Do you agree with that? Yes. Good idea. So that's the fourth conclusion. Gopalji, you wanted to say something? Gopalji ko phone do. Wo do. Mic do.
I agree with your 3 conclusions. One point I just want to mention is Mr. Govind Rao and Vedji also said that the matching of all these bills is not possible, and without that, आपके जो दोनों issues हैं वो counterproductive हो जाएंगे. Unless we have a system which matches 100% of transactions, then that credit responsibility will become a difficulty. So therefore, to reconcile them, what my suggestion is, NSC, NSDL का इतना बड़ा हमारे पास example है, online करोड़ों transactions हर second match हो रहे हैं, तो why we think कि it cannot be 100% robust matching? I do not agree on your first contention.
Okay, so
I think that is a part of stabilizing the technology. See, in order to stabilize the technology, you can keep a threshold on the invoices to be matched. You don't have to do 100% matching. No country does it.
I will Gopalji react to this. See, in a country which of 130 crore, where literacy level being different, where education standard being different, and the technology being different, the experience in the income tax department of TDS which collected, even today I'm saying after 15 years, reconciliation is not possible 100%. It's 85 to 90%, somewhere 90 to 5, maybe more than that. So it takes time for people, they punch the data correctly, they feed the data, they get meshed out. So there's a larger issue which is there. So that's why I say there the challenge lies that to expect that 100% matching will be possible is not there. Please place the system state-wise. If a person has a turnover 100 crore more, then you allow that 100% matching. If a person is, then slowly year-wise go. Year 1 will be for more than 100 crore. After 2-3 experience, I bring it down to 50 crore, then I bring 10 crore. So over a period, I dilute it out, and that's why matching can happen.
So just to conclude this point, I think the sense that I am getting is that 100% matching is a desirable goal eventually, but the IT systems need to be in place to be able to do that. And what Gopalji is saying, we could look at the stock markets as the role model as to if they are able to do it, why the tax system is not able to do it. So eventually we should get there. On that, there is no dispute.
You know, it doesn't make sense to match 50 rupees, 100 rupees invoices. That's the point.
ABC analysis has to be.
The number of invoices.
So let's do a vote on it. Are you in favor?
I would say 100%, because see, one system is there, it will not matter with the system, whether it is 5 rupees or 5,000 rupees. It will match.
Okay, so for, against, for,
So I think this is a settled issue. The Prime Minister's office had set up a committee last year called Simplification of GST. If you remember last year in May, there was a lot of discussion in the newspapers about two competing proposals. One was a Department of Revenue proposal, and then there was a alternate proposal that was finally debated at length within the government, and a decision was taken. And that decision is for 100% matching, because that is well feasible. The problem with GST is not shortage of ideas. Now, UK Sinha committee on MSME gave a very detailed, thoughtful report. I only say that because I was also part of that committee. But on June 18th of this year, the issue with GST is not shortage of ideas. Issue of GST is a traditional Indian problem of intention-implementation gap. We have good intentions, they don't translate into implementation. And this is the reality of India. There are some times we can do a railway reservation system that everybody likes because it's been implemented well. But you could have banking implementation that is very, very problematic. You could have, NSE implementation that has been very successful, but you have other large systems which have not worked. So sometimes we are unable to discriminate between what is a good idea and what is a bad implementation. And I think we have to acknowledge this problem in the case of GST, because such a fundamental system that we have at this point in time. Now, why is it important? I want to spend 2 minutes. I don't know whether you wanted me to do that. We have 52 lakh businesses on GST, which under 1 crore in revenue, where the revenue that is visible to GST is 18.5 lakh crores. So 18.5 lakh crores of our economy is visible in the hands of these small businesses. Our biggest problem, which is not a GST problem, it's not about collecting tax. I don't care whether you collect 6% or 10%. The problem that we have is those 52 lakh businesses, only 8% of them have any working capital limit from the bank. We are a unique country amongst the world where our small businesses are not served by the banking system at all. Think of it, only 8% of those 52 lakh businesses have a working capital limit. So what do? They have to go to informal sector and raise very expensive finance. Now, because of demonetization and other reasons, that's become very difficult. So they're enormously, first, starved for credit. Second, now the business slowdown has happened, and we are going to see mortality of no kind that we have ever seen in our history of the country in the small business sector right now. So the political consequences of this are very, very high. Now the question is, how do you solve this? There is a method available. This was tried, called TREADS. It is now 3 years old. And the issue with TREADS was that if I can prove that my invoice is genuine, I am a seller, he is a buyer, and I have a genuine invoice, then he is willing to come and give credit, right? Now today, in the final decision that was taken in May last year, which is now due for implementation, the ANX forms that are there, introduces this concept where the GST system allows you to know whether this is a genuine invoice or not between the seller and the buyer. And if you know this is a genuine invoice, and there are usually for these small businesses, the 52 lakh businesses, there are 6.4 invoices a month, and average value is 78,000 rupees. So for that 78,000 rupee invoice, once he as a lender knows this is genuine, it is possible to get it financed. Now, even if you finance only 1/12 of this, that is 1.52 lakh crores being put into the system. That is more than what microfinance has done in 20 years. So the issue for India is, can we now fix this GST system in a way that not only makes it convenient, as has been pointed out, also solves this provisional tax credit which can't be claimed, a problem that we are talking about, but also give trusted invoices so that financing can happen. I think we are in this one window now for the next 2-3 months or 4-5 months, where if the May implementation happens, what was agreed last May, happens properly, not in a ham-handed way that has happened for GST, we have a potential to solve all the 3 problems. The first problem, even small invoices being created as trusted invoices. Second, delinking provisional credit from the final credit, because as rightly been pointed out, the sovereign state should take a risk whether the seller has paid credit tax or not. You know, the buyer should assume that the state will manage to collect tax from the seller at some point in time. The buyer's chain should be very clean. And the third is convenience should come in and should be a simple system to use. I don't know whether that implementation will live up to the expectations, but if it does, then we will have a golden period. If it doesn't, we will have a terrible time ahead, because we will see mortality of MSMEs at a scale that we have never seen before. So we are in this fork in the road today. And I would say there's a 50% chance that it will go well, 50% chance it will not go well. This steady state, कैसे ही धक्के से चलता रहेगा system, वो दिन चले गए. Now it's either going to get substantially worse or it's going to get hopefully substantially better.
Anilji, you know, you've been a champion of MSME cause, and what he's raised is a huge felt need for all of us. Do you think this is a good idea and it must be implemented? Because I would strongly think it solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, I personally feel experience with the TREADS is very encouraging. You see, if you see that around 7,000 crores business has been taken up in 2019. And it is expected that in next 2 years, it is going to touch around 30,000 crores, which is a huge business. And through this mechanism, see, when this government has compulsorily asked the companies to having a registration on TREAD who are having more than 500 crores turnover, and with more than, I see, around 500 you see, corporates coming up on the system itself, I think system is going to work very well. And this has really addressed to the issue of financing to MSME sector in a very big way. And this experiment with the e-invoicing, which is going to come, which is being introduced on a voluntary basis from January 2020 for B2B. I think if that experiment can, this can also bring in some system like TREADS for them, it will be definitely a very good mover for financing to MSME sector.
So what Anil ji is saying, I just want to amplify this. See, what the UK Sena committee has recommended, along the lines that he has suggested, is that if we can combine the trusted invoice from the GST system with the financing of that invoice with the TREADS system, then we get a new animal of TREADS called the second window of TREADS. So the UK Sena committee is unusual because instead of making a generic recommendations as these committees will do, it actually spent time to get into the detailed design of this, which was reviewed by the Mexican system. The world's best system for this kind of financing is called the NAFIN system in Mexico. The second best system is in Colombia, and of course China uses it because of Alipay. So it actually got this design reviewed by both NAFIN and Colombia and is included as part of the committee report. So that is called the TREADS second window, which involves coordination between the changes that are coming on GST side, the invoice registration number through e-invoicing that Anil ji is talking about, IRN, the changes to provisional credit claiming that is there, the use of new forms which are called the AXN forms which are already on the portal, and the changes in TREADS. All these, if they can be brought about on a war-footing in a coordinated fashion, then we have an opportunity to still recover from this situation. If we bungle up this implementation, then we will have to pay a very serious price as we go forward.
What I would like to say is that we also need to evaluate the way TREADS is functioned. So if you look at statistics, I mean, it has made some growth. I mean, I would not say very spectacular growth, but it has made growth. And the issue is that why it has not made spectacular growth. I think there is also reluctance both on the parts of the corporates as well as small-scale MSME players to upload their invoices. Maybe, I mean, they don't want to get into the formal sector. Maybe their turnover will be exposed. Or maybe some even MSMEs fear that, I mean, their competitors would come to know that at what rate what they are selling. So I think there are issues involved. So what has been said over here is that the best system is that in case we can combine the two, I mean trade system and the GST system. Now the e-invoice system is being loaded. Once you have the e-invoice system, there will be, I mean, some similarity in the invoices that are being generated across the sector, and thereby it would be easy to implement IT systems and carry on, say, data fields from one system to another. I think on those lines, GSTN has been working, and it's just still a beginning, but I'm sure that once the e-invoice system is in place, this would be much easier to implement. But starting a system fresh, I think there has to be a marriage between the TREF system and the GSTN system, which would be more effective.
Very brief comment I want to make is that the problem with the government on GST is not the total collection alone. Problem is 40% is being claimed as input tax credit. Government has set a target to make it to 20% because it thinks there are fake claims, there are the linkages, and that's one target that we have to keep in mind, because input tax credit is a big problem, and 40% of the total tax collection at present under GST is being claimed as input tax credit. And without reducing that, government revenue will not improve. So
I think there's a little difference in the statistics. Normally, because what you pay in the cash is actually what is the value you have added. So actually input tax credit would be much more than 40%, even it can go up to the 80%. Only this limit has been put for especially the new people who register themselves, issue fake invoices, and that input tax credit is concerned. But otherwise, normally, because it's on the value added concept, so normally the input tax credit would be there. I mean, can be quite large also, up to 80%.
So what has happened, may I also add, see, this has become a health problem. You can solve it the allopathic way or a traditional way. Allopathic way is कि symptomatic में relief दे दो. आपको headache हो रहा है, बीमार हैं, आपको दवाई दे देते हैं, आपको 2 दिन में आप you start looking better. It does not solve the fundamental deeper problem. And what has been the story of GST is all about symptomatic band-aid kind of fixes that have been happening over the last few years. Finally, I think between the May report at that time finally issued by the then DA secretary at the request of the PMO and the UK Sena committee, there is a plan that is in place. What my confidence is, our ability to implement that plan is still very poor because there are 3 factors that are there. It's a very complicated situation. GST Council pulls in one direction, North Block pulls in another direction, GSTN and now NIC pulls in the third direction. Then there are vendors involved. So there is not enough leadership in actually implementing this well. Now, will that change? I am not so sure. But my feeling is, it will have to change because this is going to lead to such a deep pain in the system. Because I can tell you Karnataka numbers, because I'm from Bangalore, 30.1% increase in the last quarter in the defaults in small businesses unable to pay the taxes that they have already, committed to pay on GST. Because now the surveys are showing that they are actually seriously going out of business. So the amount we must acknowledge that there is pain in the system that is going to magnify, and it is going to become a political issue. It is no longer an economic issue. And in our country, job creation can happen only in the hands of small businesses. If these 52 lakh businesses, if we were Mexico, think of this. If we were Mexico, all that 18.5 lakh crores would have been financeable, 100% of it. In the NAFIN system, about 90% of that 18.5 lakh crores would have been financed. Trades, while well-meaning, today does 30 crores a day across the 3 systems. So the point I'm saying is that we have so far, despite many attempts, not solved this problem. Now a crisis has come. And if we still don't solve the problem, we will have bad consequences as we go forward.
But Sharaji, see, I have recently saw a committee formed by GST Council to look into this matter. It's a 12 members committee. And very surprisingly, all the 12 members are from the collector side. I mean, unless they really bring in input from the user as well as the other part, even from the lawmakers, how can they really resolve this issue?
No, I think, sir, 1 minute. There is a challenge even within this panel. I am finding that, we have some kind of a very romantic notion of how an MSME works. We all assume that an MSME is an underling of a 500 crore company. All my customers are 500 crore. That's a misconception, absolute misconception, because I am an MSME. There is a large amount of business that we do in terms of volume, numbers, large number of transactions, which would be very, very small amounts, which could be with very, very small companies, certainly not 500 crore companies, and there are numerous such transactions. In all of this of GST, and we are kind of forgetting the pain of an MSME and the fact that the credit availability to MSME is constantly falling, causing very, very deep distress. And I think that in the entire system, the sensitivity to that is extremely low. It is as low as, it's almost like apathetic to that fact that MSMEs, specifically MSMEs in services, need credit, and they need credit today, just now, not later, and not waiting for any system to stabilize. The second thing is, MSME से डरपोक कोई businessman ही नहीं है. We are scared. None of us want to even acknowledge we are MSME because the big company will not give us business. Because by law, within 45 days, they are supposed to pay us. So they send us, routinely we get letters from our customers saying, are you an MSME? We don't reply either yes or no. The default answer is no, because the minute I reply yes, maybe that business is going to go to somebody else. It's a very serious problem. So why is it कि मुझे बलि का बकरा बनाया जा रहा है? Why can't the computer be the बलि का बकरा? If I have raised an invoice and the government says I have to be paid in 45 days, then I bloody well be paid instantly or within 45 days, and somebody better be discounting it. I don't care whether your fancy system is working or it's not working. I don't care whether there is false invoicing. That is what credit guarantee funds are for. You have a completely going to waste credit guarantee fund for Mudra. You have credit guarantee scheme for MSME. What is the track record? You even have funding available for SIDBI. So much of venture capital they are supposed to give, they have hardly given anything to MSME. If all these institutions are failing, can we not trust technology for once?
No, I can build on this further. See, sir, we know this problem. This has been around for some time. We know that our steel plants at the factory gate can produce more efficient steel than any other place in the world, in competitive to even China. But we also know from the factory gate to the actual building site, the cost of distribution at 26% is higher than any other place in the world. Because what happens is when our small business, ultimately there is no business in India where small business does not get involved. Whether it's cement, it's steel, ultimately it has to flow through the hands of dealers and small businessmen. And our small businessmen have been treated badly by the system for all these 50, 60, 70 years. They have labor laws that are terrible, they have no credit that is available, the Inspector Raj hasn't changed, and all of this. And so therefore now you are at a cusp where all this is now resulting in high level of mortality. And ultimately, the seriousness of this is so high that despite the Chinese continuing slowdown, despite the fact that the US-China trade war is coming as a gift to our neighbors and Southeast Asian countries, India is not receiving anything at all. So we are actually been ignoring this problem. Now the patient is in ICU, now is about to die. This is a do or die situation. अगर हम कुछ, if we are going to treat the patient in the old way, we know that the patient will only get worse. Because as you rightly said, the old way is what has created the problem in the first place. So we have to step away and try and solve this problem on a war footing in a different pattern. If we can do this, well and good. If we can't, we will be sitting here next year talking about a different problem, which is deep economic slowdown, and of a kind that we cannot anticipate now.
Okay, so with that, I would like to actually move to the audience. Does anybody have any idea, other than this alternative video of trades, to give immediate credit to MSMEs at the lowest possible cost to the economy? Are there any ideas? Everyone agrees MSME have a credit problem, right? There's data to say that. Is there any idea other than bill discounting for MSMEs that immediately solves this problem? That's the question I have for the audience. I have the same question for the panel.
There is a foundation in MSME which has a corpus of around 12,000 crore rupees, which actually finances and guarantees the loan given to the small medium sector. But I think what is missed here is the medium sector. The problem with MSME ministry is that our focus has mostly been on the small and the small medium. But the focus, the industry which has maximum revenue potential, employment potential, growth potential is the medium sector. And the medium sector, the corporate loans can be guaranteed by that foundation. It pays a premium of 1,000-1,200 crores every year, and it gets that kind of a premium from the businesses also. So I think if a foundation that can guarantee loans, that can, without the collaterals to the medium sector, that can be the one way to ease the financing pain to the sector.
No, so there are 2 points. One of the things is that what is wrong is in the SME is the ME.
Yeah.
ME को तो निकाल के बाहर फेंक दो, उनको तो प्रॉब्लम ही कोई नहीं है. It's the micro and small enterprises who really have a problem. Okay, Sharad, you were wanting to say something.
See, I agree with him. See, the CGT MSME scheme is now doing well. Yeah. But doing well today means 70,000 crores. 70,000 crores in an 18.5 lakh crore business that 1 crore and below MSMEs are doing. If you go to 5 crores, the numbers are even larger. Is so pathetic. So what I'm trying to say is, what is the reimagination that we need? Let us talk about that. Yesterday, let me ask our audience a question. How many of you used UPI yesterday? Small number of people. Yet yesterday, UPI transactions, more transactions happened in India than American Express did worldwide. Do you know that? Do you know that if I was living in the US, when I was living in the US, I would often, on my way to the office, fill up petrol using Visa MasterCard. Buy coffee, Visa MasterCard. Buy lunch in the day, Visa MasterCard. Go home, buy diapers for my daughter, Visa MasterCard. 4 transactions a day. Yet, yesterday, MasterCard did less than 6 times the transactions that UPI did just in India. Now, the people who don't know this are all of us suited, booted Indians. Because is there anybody in the room who doesn't have a credit card? Tell me. Nobody. But only 22 million people in India have credit cards. Even if you round them off to 30 million people, that's only 10% of Indian families. So what about the 90% of Indian families? They can't use credit card as a solution. They need UPI, BHIM as a solution. They are the ones using it. But do you know they are using it at this scale? No. Because in our bubble, we are happy with what we have. So our political system, our governance system caters only to all of us. जो विजिबली नहीं, जो आप छोटे आदमी की बात कर रहे हैं, वो विजिबली नहीं है गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम को. गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम में डिजाइन फॉर दैट पर्सन इज नॉट हैपनिंग एट ऑल. Now, even when the design has happened in UK Sena committee, there is no political consensus to say, "Arey, ye to implement karna chahiye." That is our problem. And when we put our heads, we can implement things. But the desire has to be there. So we instead are really, I'm sorry to say on this, I want to comment a little on the MNC tax. And I'm again going to say this with good intention. But it's an example. Humne, our businesses, what are happening as you pointed out in your talk, the value capture is happening by a few companies in the system, and they are not paying tax on that value capture here in India. An example is, how many of you here have an Apple phone? iPhone. All right? So, how many of you have a Windows laptop? In the Windows laptop, 86% of the profits are made by Microsoft and Intel. 14% of the profits they leave to the guy who made the hard disk, the guy who made the screen, the guy who made the PCB, the guy who made the dabba, the guy who sold it. All of them put together make only 14%. Apple makes even more than 86% profits, right? Their value addition in manufacturing is only 2%. Now what has happened is they have come and said हम ये 2% value addition इंडिया में करेंगे, आप हमें 10% tax relief दीजिए, हमने दे दिया. Who is laughing to the bank? Apple, to service the India market, they on the net basis, by doing very little value addition, they've extracted a lot. No Indian business is going to benefit out of that, right?
Sir, we'll just come right back to that.
We are not even diagnosing these problems properly. We are in a trap now where either on basic items we are not able to create value addition. We are not a competitive economy. We are not going to create jobs because our small businesses are not going to grow. And we are not able to get credit to the businesses that need it despite having enough liquidity in the banking system.
Can I just take one for a minute?
No, let me just conclude. We can come back if.
1 minute, just one minute. See, I think probably we have just, for Chairman Sir, drifted the issue. The issue was basically, can the GST and raise invoice can be used for bill discounting, financing? I am, as an accountant, of the view, financing and GST 2 are different issues. Government is facing problem in collecting taxes on GST itself. There is a lot of tax evasion going up. And if we allow GST financing the bill discount in this manner, the bank will be running after the fake invoices getting discounted. And there are larger norms for borrowing. You do not know whether the supplies you have obtained, whether that was in credit, and then you get a further credit on the bill discounted where you have made the sale. There's a larger issue on that part, should not be gone away. Secondly, India being now a part of a global economy, you have to be competitive, whether it is Apple or a Microsoft, what they extract and what they don't extract. I believe the government takes due care what to give and what not to give out of it. To say that they have extracted more, because we live in a competitive world. We cannot say that we are the alone and we will not give and etc. So I believe that there is enough system mechanism where the government do take into care what should I give and what should I take. Because it is a comparative advantage, and that was the reason when we reduced the corporate tax rate. We know that we live in a corporate world.
No, so my counter question to you is, do you have a better way of giving MSMEs credit, or you think they don't need it?
I am of the view that when we are discussing GST, that's a separate model. Simply saying one of the model can be yes, in case you have raised a GST invoice, you can go to the bank, but bank will now look into your credential in many ways, not only on the basis that you have raised a GST invoice. People will raise invoice one after the other on GST and go to the bank and take a credit.
So
that can be only one
no,
process
so bank
of
is already looking at that. Bank is already looking at that, and MSME credit is down how much %?
See, question is, these are two different issues. I'm not saying that
Sir,
MSME
these
should
are
not be
not
provided.
different in
two different issues at all.
Mexico, these are not different in China,
GST
these are not
cannot
different in
be
Colombia. Why should it be different in
Sir,
India?
complex financial derivatives should be built only when your basic technology has graduated to that point.
no,
You see, you already, when we launched GST, and it was like you have set a ship sailing while it is being built. And for last 3 years, we're grappling in making that ship, whether it's technologically feasible, whether it's technologically sound, and we are trying to build complex financial derivatives on something which is still not very sound.
Financial derative. Invoice financing is not complex. Trades is not doing any complex.
Like
Trades
this-
is
like-
saying,
like-
अरे भाई ये invoice है 50 दिन 26 दिन के
Sir,
बाद पे
sir,
होगा मैं उसको
जितना ये
finance
simple sound करता है, the ingenuity that people have, no, we day in, day out track people who are into fake invoices and who are into creating false chains. But you see, itna simple लगता है, जितना simple लगता है, when it comes to implementation, the kind of people you are dealing with, it's an absolute nightmare.
So therefore, we are the country that created a system where
And Mexico, Colombia have a very uniform population.
No,
small.
listen, no, that's not uniform population. It is, we are the people who created the system which said you can't have fake people. It's called Aadhaar. We are the people who are creating a mass market payment system that is free for Indians to use. Otherwise, if we use debit cards and credit cards, 1% tax we would have paid to a foreign company called Visa or MasterCard for our whole economic activity, which we are saving. 1% economic activity which Australia and all these Western countries have to pay. We have to apply our mind to solving these problems with a fresh point of view. If we are going to tinker with the old system will only deliver what it could have delivered. You have to think from a fresh point of view. And all I'm saying is, at least for MSMEs and at least for financing, in the context of bringing trades and GST together by creating the IRN and trusted invoices, The thinking process is over. Implementation will determine whether it works or not. We are not sitting here to debate whether that thinking should be redone. All I'm saying is you are welcome to go through the UK Sena committee report and decide whether that's the right thinking. But the government has announced that they are going to implement. My question is, without making changes in the way we implement things, we will not get the results that we are setting out to do. Intention, implementation gap will come up again.
Okay. Sir, we
That's
really
all
need
I'm
to close
pointing.
this discussion on the GST.
Can I
But,
just
sir,
one-
sir, we'll do it if we have time, because we have one whole transfer pricing issue left, which we have to finish. So the only person who represents MSMEs on this panel is me, because I am one. You know, and so I am going to ask very simple questions. One, does everyone agree that credit flow to MSME is a problem? Everyone agrees. Has anyone been able to give to instantly solve this at low cost to economy? Is there any solution available? No, but TREDS is 500 crore plus company and it is inter MSME. See, sorry?
You know, there has to be a separate window. There has to be a separate window,
Only
particularly of the
the,
NBFC. application.
receiver,
There has to be a separate
on
window
whose behalf you raise
through
the
the
bill,
Reserve Bank of India
that is
to deal with
PSU
those
and
SMSs.
other things.
The
let me
point
quickly.
is that, you know, SMSs are important. They have to, you know, for this particular issue, there has to be a separate window to deal with the issue. And then, I mean, obviously.
So is there a problem in us saying that an additional window other than TREDS be created where MSMEs can do this electronically? You agree with that? Agree with that? So the consensus is that we all agree that other than TREDS, there should be a bill discounting window for based on GST for MSMEs. जिसको TREDS करना है वो TREDS करे, जिसको GST करना है वो GST करे. It's the customer's choice. Can we leave it at that? So we have concluded that there is acute credit distress in MSMEs. Immediate help is required. One good way of doing it is to create an alternative window to TREDS which allows GST-based bill discounting. Okay, now we come to the other third issue, which is very, very contentious. And I start with Suranjali. You're the only lady on the panel and kept you quiet for so long. Why exactly are you propagating digital MNCs be taxed, and why? Do you hate? Are you an economist, nationalist? Are you Bhakt? You don't like MNCs?
Okay, so I'm an economist and essentially looking at it in a very non-partisan way. Everyone in the crowd is aware that we've been purchasing from companies like Amazon. We've been using Google for a very long time. We all are avid Facebook users. But there was a disconnect in terms of the profits that were reported in India and the user base. And that sort of signaled to the tax department that not just in India, all over the world. So it's not just an India-specific issue, but it flagged to the tax department that there was something that was happening there, which was giving corporates, big corporates in the digital space, the ability to report profits in low tax jurisdictions. So the classic example that we all hear about is Google was shifting profits to Ireland, where the corporate tax rate is 12.5%, and in fact, it was paying an effective tax rate on its global profits of 2%. The web of companies that these digital corporations create are hard to even work back and say this much is attributable to India. So I feel the issue is absolutely important. It's not just me. I think the OECD has devoted enough time. A lot of lawyers in pinstripe suits are also now working to rewrite the law. So I think it's an important issue.
So Ravi, does the OECD system work for you? You're an expert on transfer pricing. If it works, why? If it doesn't work, why not? What can we do different?
See, OECD, as it's been discussed, is a organization for economically developed countries. You know, I'm reminded of a quote by Donald Rumsfeld. He was the ex-defense secretary to President Bush Jr. In terms of geopolitics, he once remarked that, you know, where you sit, where you stand upon the complex issues depends on where you sit geographically. I mean, so it was in terms of geopolitics, he said. But in terms of eco-politics, I would say that the stand of stand of the developed nations can never be our stand. If we are sitting on a table with OECD nations, we are on the other side of table, and our views can never be aligned with their views because they are the countries with resources, they are the country where those big organizations reside. So all the agreements, the DTAs, the model conventions, the OECD treaties, all have been designed in a way that the taxes go to the resident states rather than the consumption states. Now we being the developing country, we are a consumption state. We generate data, we consume data, we are data guzzlers, but the ultimate profits go to the companies where the companies are, the situs of the company is. Like Suranjali said, Apple, Google, most of the profits of Apple, global Apple, except the Apple US, went to a company in Ireland which never filed its return for 30 years. For 30 good years, it never filed its returns. So Apple pays global taxes at a rate of 1.6%. So that's as measly as possible. So there is no reason that why digital MNCs should not be taxed, and the OECD models, you have to register a strong protest. And India over the last 7-10 years has been registering a very strong protest at every forum in the OECD that this is not the model that we are going to adapt or adopt. The problem with data, I'll just like to explain a few technical things in a very simple manner. Problem with data is, like, we consume data. We think that Google is giving us the data for free. We sign those user agreements without reading because I think we don't have an option. You either agree or you don't agree. If you don't agree, you can't use. If you agree, you have to use. The moment you consume a data, you think it is being given to you as a free lunch. But for that free lunch, you are acting as a free laborer to that company. Instagram, when it was launched, it might have 10 employees. But the 1 million users that are using Instagram are the data producers. Those data points are in effect what? It's a barter system. I am giving you free service, you give me your data. It's like selling a soul to the devil, it's a Faustian deal. You give your data, no, the data is a private data, is a personal data. Once I get that data for free, I crunch the data, I analyze the data, I collate the data, and I sell it as an actionable information, as a saleable information in terms of advertisement revenue, in terms of salability, in terms of brand creation, in terms of creation of a dedicated customer list. So all of this creates a huge list of intangibles. And because you can scale up in digital world, you can scale up without having a mass, without having a jurisdiction, you can scale up. You don't need to be physically located in a jurisdiction. So there is no way you can tax those companies. So that is the problem with taxing the digital companies. If we come to the solutions to it, that how do you tax these digital companies? Now, this transaction that I've just discussed, wherein the data is being exchanged and I am giving a service. Now that has to be taken as a transaction. Now whether I take that expenditure which a company did on giving me a free service as an investment for acquiring that data or as a goods to be sold, that point has to be captured, that point has to be taken into account while taxing that intangible. That intangible of creation of a brand, the intangible of creation of a customer list has to be taxed. How do we do it? In any digital business, there are 2-3 points of intangible creation. Number one is when you do R&D. When you do R&D, there is a creation of patent, there is a creation of copyright, there is a creation of trademark. Those are actually cited in tax havens. Most of these, you would see that ultimate holding companies are either in British Virgin Islands or are there in Cayman Islands or they are in Ireland or anywhere place, right? So that is the point wherein most of the royalty goes out of the country without being taxed. So that is where the base erosion and profit shifting occurs, which is the OECD mantra of BEPS. How do you tax it? You have to tax it in terms of either by way of an inclusion rule. जो भी income बाहर जा रही है, अगर it is going to a country which is a low jurisdiction country, I will tax it an effective tax rate irrespective of what is written in the double taxation agreement. So any income which is going out or any payment which is being given to a country which is a low tax rate, you have to tax it at an effective tax rate. So that should override DTAs. Second, whatever is happening in the country, जहाँ पे आपको लग रहा है कि ये डेटा कंज्यूम हुआ है और उसको हमें कैप्चर करना है, हमारी अभी तक जो भी कॉन्सेप्ट रहा है वो परमानेंट एस्टैब्लिशमेंट का कॉन्सेप्ट रहा है. आर्टिफिशियल तरीके से OECD ने क्या किया है, कंपनीज को एक एप्पल है, Apple is sold as Apple. It doesn't matter whether it is Apple India, Apple Pakistan, Apple Iran, whatever. But what OECD does it divides Apple into 100 artificial entities. 100 artificial entities it divides into Apple India, Apple UK, Apple Ireland, और profits वैसे ही distribute हो जाते हैं. Now you have to invert the pyramid. You have to take the whole enterprise as one and tax the enterprise profits. After giving the normal profits for the routine transactions, जो premium profit है, जो super normal profit है, जिसको economic rent कहते हैं हम, that has to be divided into the country where that user is there, where that data producer is there, where that value is being created. Like we introduce significant economic presence, or like rather than a physical PE, we have to go into a virtual PE. कि जहाँ पे जितने लोग जितना डेटा यूज कर रहे हैं, जितने यूजर्स एंगेज हो रहे हैं, जहाँ पे जितनी चीज की कंजम्पशन हो रही है, उतनी वैल्यू उस जुरिस्डिक्शन को आपको प्रॉफिट एलोकेशन में लानी पड़ेगी. And that is something which OECD ultimately would have to agree to, and this is something that we have to bargain for, because ultimately जब तक हमने अपने आप को DTAs में बांध दिया है, and DTAs override Income Tax Act, तो जब तक हम ये चीज अपने उसमें लेके नहीं आएंगे और जब तक हम इस चीज की बार्गेन नहीं करेंगे कि since we are the country that produces data, we are the country that produces the value creation, brand, customer loyalty, everything, so we need our share of economic rent, we need our share of profits.
So may I add, going back to your original question of does the OECD model convention really work for us? One, we are not signatories of the OECD model convention. We follow different models even in our treaty. So in a sense, we went to the OECD to garner consensus, and as we're observing, the consensus is really broken down. The other thing is the OECD is funded primarily by the United States. 20% of OECD's funds come from the United States. So it works essentially for the developed countries. If you look at the recent proposal of the so-called unified approach, I love to say that it's unified, but it's not united. In a sense, there are few countries that are driving how we tax these companies. So as he was saying, we can't unbundle whether it's in Ireland, it's in India. So the proposal which India really pushed for is let's go for establishing economic connection of a business in India based on a virtual presence, saying that if you have user base in India, you should be taxable in India. The next step was to say, I cannot unbundle your profits. Let's go to global profits, because I don't know where you're hiding with different operations of yours. And from there, we'll fractionally apportion a profit attributable to users. What has happened in the last couple of months is that the proposal has gotten more and more complicated. So where we said, okay, let's take global profits just fractionally apportioned, the OECD said, okay, we'll accede to you, we'll go to global profits. But now what we'll do is we'll divide profits into something called routine and non-routine. And God alone knows what that means. From the non-routine, we will give something to the intellectual property and something to the users, to the market jurisdiction. And again, we'll have to agree on how much we give to you. So as you can see, the pie is just getting smaller. So my question essentially is, even to others, that should we be tied down to a consensus-based framework? If the tax department is willing to give some certainty to the taxpayers on how it will apply digital taxes, can we move away from this fetish for having consensus on taxes?
See, in my 35 years, 25 years, I've worked for multinationals. The multinationals we are talking about. I worked for Yahoo. I did a startup that sold to Cisco. I worked for Veritas. I worked for AT&T Bell Labs for many years. So I know this story inside out, right? I used to run Yahoo Emerging Markets, so I know how the tax planning happens from the inside. I want to point out that there are two shifts that have taken place, which will help us decide what is the right way to solve the problem. I think we are all in agreement there is a very big problem. And there are three groups of countries that have emerged. First is US stands alone, because first, the reality of this is that in every value chain, take even taxis, there is one landlord that has emerged, Ola and Uber. Everybody's profits are going to be sucked up by Ola and Uber. Take airlines. All airlines in the world put together for 70 years, without exception, have made less profits than Boeing and Airbus together. In other words, Boeing and Airbus make more profits than all airlines of the world put together, right? Pfizer makes more profits than top 100 hospital chains of the US put together. Cisco has having a bad year, and yet last year it made more profits than the top 5 European mobile operators, which includes Vodafone put together. So first is these people who in the value chain can capture profits, the new landlords, they are usually American companies. So America is doing fine. Second is a set of countries who figured out hum bhi landlords bana sakte hain. Those countries are Japan, China and Korea. There is no Thailand in it. There is no Europe in it. Europe doesn't have a single company of that kind. So the third group is Europe, Thailand and India. We are basically in the same camp because हमारे पास कोई landlords बचे ही नहीं है. सारे landlords या first camp में हैं, 90% of them in the US and the remaining 10% are in Korea, Japan and China. Now, we can fight the game with the Europeans because Europeans and us and Thailand are in the same category. We can fight it any way we like. It is not going to come from OECD because it's not in the interest of US to allow Europe to solve this problem. So I like to say there are only 2 populations in the world, right, who are totally screwed in this process, sorry to use that word. It is the Europeans and it is the Indians.
Which is why the EU proposal looks like the Indian.
It is not the Koreans, it is not the Chinese, it is not the Japanese because they have landlords, they have companies who own something. So I'll give you an example, if you give me a minute. Let us forget all this digital stuff. Let us take our car industry. Our car industry has revenues of 3 lakh crores. About 45,000 crores is the net profit that is made today. About half of that goes to the car manufacturers and the remaining goes to the dealers, the tier 1 ancillaries and tier 2 ancillaries. So all that 45,000 crores mostly stays in India, of which that 25,000 that goes to the manufacturer, some of it leaks away because some of the manufacturers like Suzuki are not totally Indian in nature, but by and large it stays here. Now imagine we go to the EV car industry. In the EV car industry, let us say we are selling the same number of cars, the revenues are still 3 lakh crores. At that time, the nature of the profit distribution will be more like the laptops, where 85% of the profits will be made by the people who make the battery. There are only 2.5 companies in the world.
Sir, I think we are diverting from
No,
the
no,
topic
we are
a
not,
lot.
because we are not realizing that BYD, Tesla, and perhaps Panasonic will capture almost 40,000 of that 45,000 crores profits. They will find a way to go out of India and they will never be invested back in India. This is not a digital problem. This is a problem where the value capture in the value chain is now concentrated in one part of the value chain. And if as a country you don't have a company that operates in that value chain, you can do whatever antics you want to try and capture the profits is not going to work.
Sir, let's
That
bring
is
in
the
Mr. Jain.
reality of
Mr.
the
Anil Sharma
situation
ji.
that you are looking at
See,
right now.
I will go where Mr. Ravi has just left. You see, now what has happened, we have to look at digital economy as a whole. The data which is being collected by these companies is not only that they are making money out of that, from that collection, they are using that data to generate their further businesses. So he has a very interesting point which he has mentioned about creation of virtual PE, which can be the base for taxing them in India. So in fact, if you must have seen a campaign going on of data localization, which is actually nothing but bringing that virtual PE as part of creating that as a data. Once the data is localized, it will be virtually creating their PE in India. And accordingly, wherever the data which is collected locally as being used for any other purposes, can be any income generating from that can be taxed in India.
That's an interesting point because I had collected some statistics which Dr. Rao also mentioned earlier, is that there is an asymmetry in the number of users, or let's say digital buyers, and the digital revenues reported in India. But if you look at China, they're absolutely aligned. And that comes from the fact that the data is strictly localized there, which means that they do not require a PE concept because any processes which are data driven are located in countries in-house in China and Russia.
See, problem is that we are trying to force boundaries upon a business model which doesn't cater to boundaries. So that itself is not going to help. I mean, we are trying to identify a wrong problem. The problem statement has to be identified right. This model is boundaryless. You can't artificially impose boundaries on the model.
I agree with you. So therefore, you have to create companies that behave the same way out of India. 50% and more of our smartphones are Chinese. All the profits of the Indian smartphone industry will flow to China because there's no data involved there. So we are looking for solutions that are only going to apply to 2-3 companies, and I'm all in favor of doing that.
Okay.
Don't misunderstand me.
All right.
But it won't work to the car industry, it won't work for the
Mr.
mobile
Govinda,
phone
Dr.
industry, it
Dr.
won't
Rao.
work for fine chemicals. And that
think-
is where
see,
our
I think-
businesses have to solve this problem.
At the end of the day, I think one has to look at the global profits and allocate the profits to different countries. And the agreement among the countries is a crucial factor.
Yeah.
How do you be able to take Chinese companies and ask them to allocate global profits? What are you talking about? It's just not possible. You think you can
If
go
you
to
don't-
Xiaomi
if it
and
is
say,
not possible-
"Aapka global
if
profit
it is
itna
not
ho, aap itna
possible-
India ko do."
If it
But
is not
not
possible,
gonna
it
work
is not
at all.
possible to levy the tax.
सर ऐसा
Anyway,
है जब तक
localize.
आप ग्लोबल एंटरप्राइज का ग्लोबल प्रॉफिट कैप्चर करके मास्टर डेटा फाइल नहीं बनाओगे, अपना हिस्सा नहीं लोगे, तब
one
तक
will
इसका
give it
कोई
to you.
सोल्यूशन नहीं होने वाला.
तो मैं तो कह रहा हूँ फ्रांस ट्राई कर रहा है ना, आप देखिए क्या होता है. ये you know,
Despondency is never a
the
solution.
point is the real solution is to create Xiaomi's in India. The real solution is to create Googles and Microsofts in India. The real solution is to create BYDs in India. Every bus, every EV bus sold in India, every EV bus sold in India is Chinese. 99.1% of the EV buses that operate as public transport buses out of 4 lakh buses
Let
are from
Suranjali come in
one
now.
country,
Sharat,
China.
back
Let
to
Suranjali come in.
Create those
Going back to
companies. That
digital-
is what is
okay, so we're
important.
going back to digital economy, and let's look at an enterprise as an enterprise. The end of the day wants to make a profit. Flipkart, classic example, homegrown, place of effective management for Singapore. What
I
prohibits
am
a
all in
Indian
favor of the
digital
digital
company?
thing. I am saying digital
No,
thing
what
is a
prohibits
small
a-
problem. We spend more money keeping Air India afloat than buying Embraer and actually creating a profitable aircraft industry in
You
India.
know, we've discussed a lot.
Our problem is that we have got so captivated by airlines, not by aircraft, where the money is in the aircraft industry. We got so captivated in running hospitals rather than creating drug companies while the money is in the drug company. We got so captivated by creating the structure of the economy that is broken. And now we are saying, क्योंकि हमारे पास structure नहीं है, हम tax ज़्यादा करके थोड़ा किसी तरह कर लेंगे. They are smart companies, they'll find a way to work around the problem. The long-term solution is to build the companies where the value is going to be captured. And that is important
By that
part.
logic, we should not bother about an Apple not
No,
paying
it's
tax
not
in India.
either or. I am not saying either. I am all in favor
No,
of
this
what
is
you are
becoming
saying.
like,
But that is necessary,
Republic
but not
TV or Times
sufficient.
Now or
That is
something
the
like
point
that.
I'm
So
pointing.
please, Mr. Jain, you haven't spoken.
Yeah. See, just to 1 minute, I need to react on this issue. The debate is how to raise taxes on the part of the digital e-commerce which is happening. My friend has been trying to aspire that we should do this and this. I believe taxation is concerned with the present state of economic affair. What will happen tomorrow to economy is a separate issue. What we could do and what we will earn, that tax will follow. In case we can create laws, etc., my friend wants, that's not a second issue. Issue is what we need to do today. We live in a globalized economy and we have to follow the international law. And that way, our argument and our forces should be to persuade that what is happening globally and we get a cake out of it. That's a moot point, we need to discuss it out. My view is that human by nature is imperialistic. Everybody want to encroach upon others' area, and international law is an arena where everybody will try to do it. If you are a developed nation, you are forced to reckon with an economy, you will try to dominate on the developing nation. That is happening. And one of the typical example has been the Switzerland. Since 1929, the Switzerland has been using the law of secrecy to its advantage in the manner that everybody has dumped the money in Switzerland and they have made a lot out of it. And now it has started pinching the developed economy. Now they said, no, law secrecy will not be applicable because the US and other forces are there. Similarly, where these company the profits or distributions are concerned, it's a never-ending debate. People want to encroach upon others' area. The US and the developed nation want that this is our cake or the whatever age it, we should get it. And the developing nations say, no, this should be our cake and we should give a cake out of it. That you rightly said that we are trying to get it, that how do we work it out? So our discussion today is, yes, there is a scope to get some cake out of this, what the digital commerce and business is being created. And one way can be where the data is being created and where later on being sold out. Because when data is being created, no money is moving out. So that's why the right of taxation becomes a difficulty. But question is, based on that, can we create a model like on the line of what my friend Gupta ji has said, PE model? Can we create that on that basis where data creation happens, that PE model can be, but it's a long, long battle. Nobody can expect a big relief even immediately on that part. We need to be work out on that part. That's my impression.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, there's a lot of aspects that are still left. So really to get to a conclusion, because, we have to actually write down 6 points, which we will send to the Honorable Prime Minister, to the government, and say, so this panel feels do this, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Suranjali, can you bring together 1, 2, 3, 4 for us? Since you are the mildest person on the panel.
Not really. So I think we've already done a lot in terms of putting the SEP into our Income Tax Act. As rightly pointed out, it has no teeth at the moment because it's not in our treaties.
No, make it sound like a recommendation. Like you're formally writing to Government of India, say my point 1 is do this.
Yeah,
Point
I guess
2 is do this.
They should push for an SEP. At least in the OECD, there's been one concession to say that we should have a new nexus rule. So bilaterally negotiate for that. We have a provision in the Income Tax Act, which is problematic, as experts would say, which is fractional apportionment, but at least it's an option to bring people to the negotiating table. So go ahead and do that. If that doesn't work, then we can expand the scope of the equalization levy and turn it into withholding tax, if at all that's possible. So I think those are the 3 things that I would say are possible.
Okay. Anything additional we need to do, or everyone in agreement with what she's saying?
See, what I was...
no, first question, sir. Is everyone in agreement with what she just said?
No, I agree with that. But another additional point is that our demand of localization of data, we should not be compromising on that, because ultimately that is the only hold which we can use to, put any kind of taxes.
Okay, so the conclusion is whatever Suranjali said is the recommendation, plus data localization is absolutely essential. We should not compromise on it because we cannot exercise taxation authority otherwise. Is that fair?
Yeah.
No, we'll come to the next one. So we have one full issue left.
No, additional point.
Okay, yeah.
2 additional points is, because we are globalizing, it is a globalizing world, we have to create global winners out of India. Instead of taxing foreign global winners, which I am all in favor of doing, but we have to create a business environment that we create global winners in every field.
सारी problems का solution है.
No,
but
exactly.
That is not a taxation issue.
No, last is we must recognize that we can be either a country or like Thailand, which has no brand, only services companies, or we can be a country like Korea, where everybody here can mention Korean brands that are global brands now. And I want to tell you that in 1975, Thailand's per capita income was more than Korea. So this is something which is possible by design. But it has to be starting with an intent where we say size of the economy matters, but the structure of the economy matters even more. And if we don't get the structure of the economy right, we don't create global winners out of India. All these tax things are helpful, but they won't give us the gains. Just the way Europeans will struggle, we will struggle because we will be in the same bucket as they are, like we have been in the last 50.
Samiji, one area...
just 1 minute, sir. For the editorial, what he's talked about is actually what was discussed in the first panel, the macroeconomic essentials. Rohan had given a 15-minute presentation, 1/3 as passionately as Sharad, arguing for this. So make sure that the recommendations from the macroeconomic panel include that value capture must happen in India and we must create global winners out of India, which is the substance of what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Samiji, one more important area which we have not discussed is with regard to collection of taxes. That is, you see, custom duty on ET, electronic transmissions. You see,
Actually, there are two things we have not covered. So one is this.
yes, this is very important.
No, very important. No, so I am actually coming to you only for that.
Okay.
And the second thing that we have not covered is the cash burning models. What should be the tax
Absolutely.
treatment?
Yeah, okay.
So if you could get it rolling and then we'll see.
See, now, as you know that the way businesses are being conducted now overseas, so many things which were earlier coming as in a physical form, now they are coming into a digital form. So around 49 items has been identified as digitizable products. So these are called, and then when these are, for example, you take the case of 3D printing. Now, nothing will move physically. It will be only be some kind of a data will flow in the system, and manufacturing will be done in another country. So, at the moment, according to whatever we have discussed in WTO, we have agreed there is a moratorium on electronic transmissions, and this is going to be debated in the month of December, and then finally in ministerial, which is going to happen in June 2020.
Are you saying ITA doesn't work for us anymore?
Yes. So my point is that if you look at the data and you look at the UNCTAD report which has been created on this, it is very clearly mentioned that India, who is a net importer of ET, is losing around $500 million every year if we start imposing custom duty on ET. So I strongly suggest that we should be thinking on this line, we should debate on this, and this will definitely augment our resources so far as custom duty is concerned.
So one more conclusion is that ITA no longer works for us. We have to revisit that and make sure that duties are imposed.
Yes, that is one point.
Right. And
Second
now
point,
we come to the cash burning model.
Yeah. On cash burning model, you see now what has happened if you look at the cash burning model, these companies are showing heavy losses. Their major turnover, very high turnover. For example, if you take the case of Flipkart, there's a turnover around 300 crores and the losses are 2,000 crores. And these losses are being shown
Can you kindly repeat that number? Turnover 300 crore, loss how much?
2,000 crores. So those are being carried forward as business losses. So what is going to happen? So they have not paid any tax this year. They are going to pay not going to pay taxes as and when they have eliminated all their competitors and they are finally earning profits. So we have to really think on what is this expenditure? Is it really a business expense or what kind of expense that is? Should we allow that as a revenue expenditure and allow it to be carried forward? It's a very technical point. I would
Ravi, you got the
suggest
tax
Ravi
man
to-
here.
Yeah.
Sir, I believe that a traditional business model of a brick and mortar, you can see a lot of brick and mortar here, was always that transaction पे कभी loss नहीं होता. आप अगर 2 रुपए की चीज खरीदते हो तो आप 3 की बेचोगे, 2.5 की बेच दोगे, 4 की बेचोगे, you'll have a margin. Transactional loss कोई नहीं लेता. You might have a break even because there are operational expenses. You might take 2-3 years to achieve a break even, but transactional loss का कोई concept नहीं होता. What these businesses in last 10 years in terms of startup and technovation have done is that because of the availability of lot of angel funds and the PE funding, the private equity funding, because पूरे developed countries में क्या हुआ, Japan, like SoftBank, Singapore और like US, इनमें खुद की consumption capacity नहीं रही है. इनके पास जो capital आ रहा है, they have been earning money on the capital that they have earned over hundreds of years. There is no place to invest. How do you invest? So you invest in developing countries. वहाँ क्या, क्योंकि कंज्यूमर मार्केट आपकी 125 करोड़ लोगों की कंज्यूमर मार्केट है, तो यहाँ पे आप क्या करोगे, आप अपना पैसा इन्वेस्ट करोगे. सो इट्स अ वेरी हाई रिस्क 10x मॉडल दैट यू इन्वेस्ट 10 into 10 कंपनीज और उसमें से एक भी अगर 20x आपको दे गई तो आप यू आर इन नेट प्रॉफिट. पर इसमें होता क्या है कि आपने ट्रांजैक्शनल लॉस लेना शुरू कर दिया. दैट फ्लिपकार्ट और अमेजन और वट एवर और अर्बन लैडर, एनीथिंग यू टेक, आपकी नेट कॉस्ट अगर कमोडिटी की 100 रुपीज है, you are giving a deep discount and selling for 80 rupees. Now here the customer thinks that something which was to be sold by retailer for 100 rupees, I am getting at 80 rupees, I buy it. So they gain traction. पर जो ये ट्रांजैक्शनल लॉस है, ये ट्रांजैक्शनल लॉस को कोई तो फंड करेगा, कस्टमर कर नहीं रहा है एज ऑफ नाउ. सो हाउ इज दैट बीइंग फंडेड? वो पीई से कैपिटल लेकर आ रहे हैं. सो कैपिटल जो बैलेंस शीट की आइटम है, आपकी कैपिटल रेज किया आपने, दैट इज बीइंग फनल्ड एंड चैनल्ड टू fund the retail loss. Transactional loss को, revenue loss को आप capital से fund कर रहे हो. कब
How
तक?
do we tax it? That's
तो
the
वही मैं कह रहा हूँ. ये इसको हम कहते हैं cash burn. इसको हम कहेंगे cash burn. ये कब तक चलता रहेगा? जब तक आपके पास capital है. बिना capital खत्म होगी, cash burn खत्म हो जाएगा. तभी there are so many business models that go fail. Snapdeal almost failed. There are so many business that go kaput because the fresh capital that is chasing it suddenly stops. Now they are building huge losses. Why do they do it? इसका फायदा क्या है? Ultimately हर investor दूसरे investor को sell करता रहता है. The long-term target being to list it on the stock market. जैसे ही आप stock market पे list करोगे, retail investors will come in. They will buy those shares at very high valuation. Those institutional investors will kick out. The QIBs will kick out at 10x valuations, and those retail investors would be, will be left with trading those shares. So that is how the money gets into those capital fundings.
So I'd like to add to that. So basically, deep discounts is an issue that we're dealing with even in our competition law, and we've had a very hard time. So I think these are just basically showing expenses in India and showing revenues elsewhere. So again, going back to the fact that we need to go to global profits and apportion profits to
So in
functions.
terms of a recommendation on doing this, with zero knowledge of tax, I'm going to say something, so don't laugh. But you can free to correct me. So a cash burn model is a model where you're incurring transactional losses.
And being funded by?
No, wherever it is being funded by, I don't know. If you are incurring transactional losses, those losses have to be treated as a capital expenditure and not revenue expenditure and taxed thus. Have I said it correctly? No. How?
I have an entire absolutely different view. One should not be, I'm saying it should be narrow view on that part. See, it is a business model which operates. Revenue should not try to innovate in a way to disturb the revenue model. And this is how the businesses operate. There is always a gestation period when you start on a business. If I open a shop today in the morning, there may be certain overheads which I may not be able to recover because my turnover is too low. And in that part, if in case I incur losses, then obviously, yes, that losses have to be allowed. And one can tax only the income. The source of funding of the money cannot be a reason that this is coming from the capital, the loss is coming, because all losses come from capital only. Even if a running industry today incur a loss in a particular year, from where that loss gets funded?
I think, you see, quite a lot of these losses happen because of the non-competitive practice of giving deep discounts. So Competition Commission has to take this up, and non-competitive practices will have to be, this has to go there, and then obviously they should be prevented from doing this type of predatory actions.
See, Mr. Rao is on to something here because, see, the patient has tumor, therefore has headache, we can cure the headache. This is we have to go to the deeper problem. The deeper problem is that Huawei was set up 3 years after CDAC and CDOT were set up. They are the global players. 3 years हमने पहले शुरू किया, हम $25 billion हमने telecom capex खरीदा last year. Our biggest Indian company, Tejas Networks, was $130 million. अगर हम उसमें ऑपरेट ही नहीं करेंगे, वो फॉरेन प्लेयर्स हैं, वो किसी तरह ये सब ड्रामा करके निकल जाएंगे. The real problem is not fixing the headache by giving headache medicine. It is to get rid of the tumor. The tumor is what prevents us from creating value-added businesses. हमारा ओला और उबर देखिए और दूर जाने का
commission. No, that is not the subject matter.
We are not creating a level playing field for Indian companies at all. We are helping foreign companies and they win and say उसको tax कर देंगे, हमारा हो गया, ये दिल साफ हो गया. Real problem is कि हम अपनी companies को kill कर रहे हैं.
Sir, there are different panels in the conference.
I think these are business models we should not question. You see, we have seen Reliance Jio doing the same strategy. And again, in the private equities, and if you really want to promote the startups and all, so this has to go. You see, out of 20 startups, 2 might succeed, 3 might succeed, then please make money out of it. So if you're going to stop this and make all these kind of restrictions, this will not work. I think, these are globally accepted business models, and people do it. So, and it happens in India also, and if you have deep pockets, even the Indian players do it. You have to accept that.
Okay, so I am making one addition based on what Mr. Jain said to the recommendation, which is if irrespective, because capital is the source of funding, you can't tax cash burn, but my earlier statement remains, if there is a transactional loss, it is a capital expenditure, irrespective of wherever that funding is coming from. Yeah, Gopalji.
Our discussion focus has become how to tax others' effort. This is not, like this the country cannot progress. I agree on some part, I agree with Sharadji, we have to work on models of creating values. If even in the past history we see, India created values out of knowledge. So that we cannot just say ki if Google has done research and then how do we tax that? That's not a simple solution. We have to work. They are two different topics. If I agree that if the data has been generated and created in India, we should get something. But if they have done research, they have done development, they have come out with innovations, then how do we make a structural through which we take
There is a lady at the back. Gopalji, only point is, as a welfare state, it is not only that you allow
The lady,
others to
please.
flourish, but it is your also duty to ensure that the small industry, which is your domestic industry, also flourish. By this, by not addressing to cash burning, you are actually harming your industry.
The issue that you raised is very pertinent. However, this particular session is basically to look at how the government can get the... The issue of creating a climate for investment and creating this thing is a bigger issue.
So my question is slightly different from the discussion that's going on, but it's about the GST itself. Is there a challenge if we completely remove the system of direct taxation and generate all revenues only through indirect taxation and focus the resources of the country to make the system of indirect taxation so efficient that it serves all revenue purposes? Is this even feasible?
नहीं, indirect taxation में GST related, like I mentioned, you see there are very limited scope as far as tax narration is concerned. One thing that could be done is that merger of the slabs and slabs could be reduced. But on the other hand, we really have to focus on the compliance part. So 2-3 steps are being taken. One is to really simplify the return. Second is that we should really work on the e-invoice system. And if these two things also happen, I think a lot of things will happen. On the other things, on the bill discounting, I mean, the discussion has taken place. So we should also critically study the threads. And of course, in my view, it can be merged with the GST and in the long run after the invoicing comes into play.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. Let's all stand for a picture.